Hello, fellow bassists. Welcome back to the Bass Player University. This is George Mesa, and I'd love to talk about, as you may have noticed with the title and the thumbnail, I want to talk about picks. And total coincidence there that the word thumbnail might actually have a lot to do with what we're going to discuss today. Because over the, I was going to say years, but over the decades, I have basically developed my own personal style, which I aim for with every student I've ever had. Best case scenario for me is that somebody takes my advice and, dare I say, wisdom at this point, and turns it into theirs. That's the point of the Bass Player University. That's the point of every private lesson I've ever given, even if it was for a different instrument, which is not very common, but I have essentially been teaching other instruments my entire teaching life as well, primarily guitar and ukulele, of course. But bass guitar is 100% home base for me. I am a bass player at heart. My heart and soul is bass. I've always been a bass player as a human being. So hopefully a lot of you feel the same way because you do have to embody the spirit of bass to be a bass player. It's not about, oh, I play guitar, I know the strings, I can play the right notes. Missing the point. Bass playing is an ethos. It takes your mind, body, and soul to do it. So, having said all that, what about this age old debate here? And I was just discussing it in my most recent email that I sent out to my email list, which I highly suggest you get on because it's beyond the videos. I give more tips and inspiration for you to keep going with your bass playing life. So, I discussed my solutions to not having to have a pick on hand, no pun intended, as you play your show because or studio, whatever it happens to be. Fingerstyle playing is one way to do it. And me personally, I find myself leaving the typical alt plucking for sometimes a little more unique styles, unique ideas. And that may or may not include imitating the sound and the technique of a pick. So, what do I do to have a pick sound, to have picks on hand? Primarily, if you're going to imitate a pick, you want to imitate the motion. You want to imitate the idea. So that way you get the use of the pick. The pick isn't there just to have a different tone. Sometimes, and more often than not, I would say, having many decades of metal under my belt, please watch my previous video, Can You Even Metal? You want to have it for fast stuff. If you're playing tons of 16th notes, rapid fire, you should probably have a pick. And I did not. But I also chose not to pluck the fast stuff because we were playing stuff in some bands that was very fast. So if you're doing, some kind of a something like that, right? This, there was no pick. But as you can see, I have a pick hand, if you want to call it that. The pick motion is available to me, as you can see. Right? This is the. Now, how am I getting such a pick sound going down and up? Is the real question. A lot of times, and this is just topic number one, by the way, a lot of times the up has the nail, of course. But there are other times, or on the way down, you don't get as much of the nail on the way down, right? But if you look from here, from this angle, right? It's nail both times. There's nail here. I have nail over my string. That may be hard to see from where you are. Let me see if I can bring that bass a little closer for you. Nail. Can you see the edge of my nail sticking over the string? I have a pick on my thumb. There is a pick. Whoops, it's not focused on me. Hold on. Hold on. I'll get it. I'll get it. Oh, it's tough. Sorry. Well, I wish I could show you better. Perhaps I'll take a picture and maybe I'll provide it to the email list. But I have a little tiny extension of my nail on the outside part of my thumb, not the inside part, but the outside part of my thumb. Obviously, the part that touches here. When I trim my nail, when I get to here, put it against my black t shirt. Can you see it there? There's a little extension of my thumbnail. You don't see it here. Here, you see it? You see it peeking out? That's an extension of my nail. I actually have a pick there. It's important to work it out. You have to have it, it has to be ready. Sometimes we can add more. Go for triplets. I'm not only doing thumb now, I'm doing the pointer. Now that's a whole nother idea. That isn't necessarily pick, so to speak. Now we're going beyond the realm of pick. But for that particular thing, I'm using my thumb. Now, there are many other instances where I don't do that. If it's a slow play, now, for example, I'm no like raging Beatles fanatic or anything, but I just did a relatively Beatles based show where it was 70, I'm saying more like 85% Beatles songs. So Paul McCartney is using a pick. And there are times when it doesn't necessarily sound like it, but he is. But a lot of times it does sound like it. And you can really hear the attack of the pick. So when it's a slower bass line that I can remove myself from this very fast down up thing, this very metal edge down up thing, now I can focus on tone for every single little tiny pluck. When you do this, you're never going to get exactly the same sound going down and up, especially if you're not using a pick. Your hands are always going to have that very human, very organic element where it's not exactly the same. Very, very, very similar, but not exactly the same. Also, when I'm doing this, yes, I can palm mute. I'm sticking to B minor just so you can get the gist of these tones with the different tones I'm going to be getting. I can palm mute while using my thumb. Now, this is a great feature that does not exactly happen when you're playing fingerstyle, unless maybe you were to touch and hold the back of a string, which is like, okay, you can still get it done like this. But something's lacking in that regard. Something doesn't sound quite right. So, what you can also do is focus on up plucks, not downs, but ups with the pointer. Now, in this scenario, I use the side of my pointer facing the middle, not the outside of the pointer like I would do the outside of the thumb, but the inside, technically speaking, of the pointer. I leave a little bit of a nail extension, which may not be as obvious this time, I doubt. And this allows me to come up. I am not using my pointer to pluck. I'm not using the pad. I'm using the nail. I'm past the pad. I'm past the tip and I'm on the nail. Now, in that scenario, I did go down once. It's comfortable to do so. It's not so bad. I did a little rake, but I also raked down. And I think the tone is remarkably different than it would be if I were to do this as a fingerstyle pluck. So as a result, you can get this, let's just call it Beatles-esque tone or something more aching to perhaps even in a pseudo country setting or some other settings where there's a very upfront attack of the note because there is the attack, there is the sustain, and there is the decay, the three phases of any note that you pluck. We get the attack, we get the sustain, and then we get the decay of the note. We're dealing with attack right now. Attack is where the tone hits the ear the most obviously. So up plucks with your pointer can get a lot of nail. And the tone is different. You can get that very I think that imitates a pick very well. The other thing I do, depending on the scenario, depending on what I need and how my fingers are dealing with the whole song and everything, I use my ring finger as well, not my middle, but my ring. I skip the middle for just about all nail plucking when I specifically use my nail. And again, you can see the angle of my finger. I am using the pinky side of my ring, the nail, not the finger, not the finger, but the nail, right? And I actually come inwards. I try to now my volume is low. Let me turn it up a bit so we can really hear what's going on here. That's all ring finger nail. I'm watching the C on my screen because I'm curious exactly where my hand is ending up for you to see. You'll notice I also did a left hand mute, which we'll have an entire episode on soon enough, which was allowing me to pluck harder. Without that mute, I don't think it really has the right tone. With the pointer, the thumb, up thumb only. Lots of ways to imitate the pick. Lots of ways. And the best feature of all this is that you don't have to have this very losable and very droppable pick. And in some cases, relatively expensive because there are more than 50-cent picks out there. Believe it or not. Some of them are $20, $30, and you don't want to lose that. You know, violinists pay thousands of dollars for their bows. So it's okay if you buy an expensive pick. It's justified. You don't need any piece of plastic. I mean, people are, doing they have their little the outline and they just pop a pick out of a credit card or something. I mean, it's a little silly. So you can make a pick out of anything. You can use a dime, use whatever you want. But you've been given the picks that you need. Ask a classical guitarist, right? I do wish I had slightly better zoom ins for you at this moment. But if you request it, I'll put it up on the website. I'll provide some photos. I'll have a discussion of it. I think it'd be great to have a back and forth discussion about this, how much you use your pick, how you change your tone settings. I have a little more mid range when I plan on using the pick. And maybe my highs are a little higher, depending on the room and everything. There's always factors that, you never know. But overall, more volume will help you here because you don't have to overpluck. And if you overpluck for tone because you want to, you should provide muting from the left hand or from the palm of the right hand. So, plenty to discuss here, plenty more to discuss in this category. But I think you got to see of some of my more unique techniques that are not slap regarding the thumb and the fingers that are not finger style. I can play every single thing I just played today with regular finger style, but it's a different sound. And I've got my nails manicured a certain way. Might as well use them, right? It is manicure. So, yes, I'm okay with filing my nails. It's not just for women. And it will benefit you greatly to not have all these kinks and hills and valleys in your nail shape. Also, your left hand nails should be fairly short, but definitely not too short. You need nail to fret. Nail helps. If your nail is too short, you'll be actually pulling. Eventually, you'll either hit underneath your nail like this, or you'll pull the finger back from the nail, from tip down. You're pulling your finger away from the nail if you're fretting too aggressively or wrong. And if you have less nail, there's a chance that it'll happen before your next, nail cut. And that's a shame. We don't want that. But the thing to mention is that when you're doing, when this is your life, and faster, sure, whatever, not really important how fast it goes. But when that is your life, you're going to have a pretty scratched up thumbnail. So not all nails are created the same. And there are products that actually strengthen your nails for classical guitar. Ani Meyer comes to mind, but most people shouldn't need it. You really, if you use it and you cut your nails regularly, it should be enough. Nutrition is a factor. Nutrition is always a factor in everything, but proper nutrition can guide your nails. I was missing my thumbnail. It wasn't there. And I'm not afraid to discuss this or admit it. I didn't have an appropriate right thumbnail for a few years. And whatever the reason was, medical reason. Bottom line is that I started using my thumb more as a bass player. Maybe that allowed more blood flow. As a very good friend of mine mentioned, that could have been the reason. Makes sense. Maybe I mentally brought my thumb back to life. But my thumb and my middle, by the way, were not doing so great. They were just kind of, they just looked destroyed, like a barren landscape of, hills and valleys of just, it wasn't a straight up nail. It looked pretty disastrous, actually. And I could still use it, of course, but they were gone. They were gone for 3-4 years. I started playing more. This is right when I started playing. So this is a long time ago now, a very long time ago. I got them back. I got them back within a year. I got my middle back within a year. My thumb did not come back right away, and I was not slapping a lot at first, and I was not using my thumb for anything but a comfortable mute and not with pressure. So I wasn't really getting a lot out of it. Then I started to, pluck with the thumb, and then I started to. And then my thumbnail came back. So interesting. I bet if I had better nutrition, things like silica, I bet I would have got it back faster just by knowing that. So there's always more to find out. Yeah, hey, you can always look it up. Thumbnail is deteriorated. What's the best foods to provide the best thing? What am I lacking? What am I missing? And most of the time, you just have to drink more water too. So I thought this was worth discussing because health matters. If you aren't healthy, you're probably not going to be able to stand on a stage for 4 hours or more, which I've done in the sun. So if you want to play gigs like that, you need to be relatively healthy. You need to have a very strong back. Look at me leaning over. How bad? You need to have a very strong back. Your core needs to be fairly tight. This doesn't mean do yoga every day, but you should be able to do things like yoga. You should be able to do it, whether you do it all the time or not. I'm not here to tell you any of that stuff. I'm here to talk about bass. But all of these things in your life do make you a more efficient bass player and a more locked in guarantee if you do have to sub for a long gig like this, if you do have to do a long studio session. Bring water, bring a sandwich, be ready to sit down and not move for many hours if needed, especially if you don't know who you're working with. It's different if you got your crew, your band you've been with for 10 years. It's totally different, right? Okay. I think that's plenty. Plenty of a rant at the end there, but give me a like, subscribe, comment, share, join the email list so we can have a back and forth. You can always reply to those emails. We can talk. You can call me anytime. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys real soon.